Finance meeting today, August 31, 2 hour p.m. Heavy Ride. We will start with the opportunity for public comment as extended at every public meeting. Do we have anyone wishing to address the board commissioners? Anyone online? No one. Okay. Okay, that being the case, we'll move on to business item 3, which is the approval of the minutes of our August 24 meeting.
Move to approve the minutes of August 24.
I second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, that moves us to today's major topic of discussion. We have Wes Graham from Tax Administration here. Well, going to talk to us about the 2022 common level ratio and implications of that. So if there's nothing else, we'll just jump right into it.
Okay, thank you. We are going to look at the growth and trends, key indicators, and impact projections. First, growth and trends. These are the changeable intaxable assessments in millions of dollars from 2017 through 2023. Of course, we haven't completed 2022, so 2022 values and 2023 are projected values. As you can see, in 2017 we went up to 408.9 million of new construction that we placed on county tax roll. Starts to trend down. We got only $360.8 million in 2020, and we had more to pick up, but that was COVID, so there was some downtime, and so it only went to 360.8 million. And then in 2021, because we hadn't finished placing a lot of properties on the tax roll during COVID, it jumped up to 469.3 million, which is quite a big increase, but it was because of COVID. And so now in 2022, I'm projecting 334 million, which is about a 16% decrease from the average of the last 5 years. So we are a robust economy. We are building as fast as we can. So that's a good thing. But what I'm looking at is commercial industrial properties, new construction, just isn't there like it's been the last 5 years. So I think, when you're looking at the change in assessments, you're looking at not residential properties. I think that'll still remain robust. I think you're looking at commercial industrial properties. We're not going to have as many of the huge warehouses. We still have some to put on, but I don't think you're going to see the growth that we did see the last 5 years.
I'm sorry, can we?
I'm sorry.
Come back to that if you would, please. So I'm not sure I follow this spike. Is that the capture of new value?
Yeah, that's the spike is because of COVID. In 2020, we only put 360.8 million. But in 2021, we put 469 point. We had quite a few audit assessors were on furlough. And when I came in December of 2020, we didn't put a lot of the commercial properties on the tax roll.
So this was essentially getting caught up.
And in 2021, we caught up with all the new construction. And that's why you see such a large increase.
Yeah, and just to be clear, and I finally figured this out about 5 minutes ago, our tax base is continuing to increase. This is showing that it's increasing at a lesser amount over time.
Correct.
Okay.
you know, I believe we're still in a robust economy, but
Yes.
but it's the commercial industrial properties that seem to be slowing down.
But on that vein, I mean, this is confusing to me. You have your measurement on your y-axis is dollars. That's an absolute number, so that's not a percentage. That's an absolute number. So
Correct.
So we're losing value, despite the fact we're adding new properties. It's fewer dollars at the end of the projection.
Correct. We've added $2,367,335,000 from 2017 through 2022,
Okay.
which is a huge, you know, it's what I call a robust growth.
Wes, when you're using this term taxable assessments, what does that mean?
It means that property that's not exempt, or properties that's not in any kind of special program, these are taxable amounts.
Okay. And so the taxable amounts go down, is this charting existing properties year by year? Is this charting new properties only? Is this the entire taxable assessment base?
This is the increase in new construction.
So that's all this is an increase in new construction?
Correct.
Okay.
So just a few things to point out. We all know, of course, the economy has been challenging in the last year, to say the least, in terms of the rate of inflation. And so that does make it difficult right now as you look at that y-axis, because obviously a dollar today has a buying power very different than a dollar in 2017. And so we don't really have any way to combat that in terms of providing the graph. But Wes, before we do move on to the next slide, can you provide just a little bit more detail on the factors that you looked at to determine the projections? So the projection for 2022 as well as 2023.
Yes, I looked at all the open permits that and calculated what would be completed in the rest of 2022 and what would be completed in 2023. And using those projections, unless there's a lot more permits keep coming in and coming in and coming in, which it doesn't seem that that's what's going to happen. I think these will be the figures. I just looked at my figures for end of July. We picked up, placed $185 million on the tax roll thus far for 2022. So I think if we, you know, for the next 5 months, if we put another 30 million on there, we'll look at around $335 million. And we may go a little above that, not a lot, but a little.
Well, yesterday you and I worked on the building permit information. I think you referenced, you had mentioned, I think in the projections, you were estimating 75% of the construction value shown on the building permits. Is that what's reflected in these projections?
That's what I'm looking at because we're using 2010 values, not new construction costs as of today. So when I do my estimates, I look at a little bit less values.
You're looking at assessed value.
I'm looking at assessed value.
Right.
These are all assessed values.
Right.
These are 2010 values,
Which is,
not 2022 or 2023 values.
which is what you should be using.
Yes, sir.
So our last assessment was in 2010. That hasn't changed. My house is assessed at $208,000. It's been that for 10 years,
Yes, sir.
12 years.
So far, I'm having trouble understanding where the 75% comes in because
Yeah.
our common level ratio still stands around 85, which is the gap between the assessed value and the market value, as best we can tell, as best the state can tell. So that, okay, 85 is the number in my head. Where's 75 coming from?
Quite a few times they overestimate the actual cost. And why I don't know if they estimate the actual cost of the building and the building permit. And so in this county, it's been my practice to use about 75% of that market, of that value as an estimate. And that also doesn't include the raise in the land value. I didn't include that. So, you know, I'm sort of conservative. So I like to, you know, be a little low than too high. I don't want to go an over expectation of it. And once a vacant lot is approved, it goes from a vacant value to an improved value, which may be increased whatever neighborhood it's in, you know, quite a bit or not much.
So these are, so if I'm hearing you correctly, your estimates are 75% of the assessed value of an unimproved acreage.
No, on the
Yeah.
acreage, it's just the vacant value.
Okay,
Have left it on there, not the improved value of the land.
okay.
Because it's very difficult to calculate.
What, could you repeat one more time?
Okay,
The question Commissioner Eichelberger asked, why aren't we using the CLR, which is about 85 versus 75? Could you just repeat that?
it's because it's what the properties that I've looked at that have the new construction value seem to be at about 75% seems the assessed value that we're actually placing on there. I don't know if they're over projecting, but it seems about 75% is the value that we assess at that. And it could be more or less, but again, I'm more conservative.
Wes, that's 75% of the estimated construction costs that's on the building permits that have been submitted to the municipalities of the county, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I think that may be the point of confusion. We have our building permits that are submitted from the municipalities to the assessment office that list prospective construction. So it hasn't been constructed yet, right? So we really don't have an assessed value on it. We have an estimated price of construction. That construction doesn't include land.
Okay.
Wes is using 75% of the estimated cost on the building permit to make these projections.
Okay.
So I think the potential point to take away though, Wes, would it be safe to say that the estimates you have here are very conservative? And while the trend line is going down, we could see that it actually be higher, potentially 25% higher at best case than what we're showing on here for our projections?
I think that would be wishful thinking. I think that probably it could be higher.
We've been using that practice before, though, haven't we?
I'm sorry.
We haven't used that practice, that 75% in the past that I can recall.
I use it for my calculations, but no, I haven't presented that.
So the step numbers that we get, state tax equalization numbers we get, how fresh are those numbers? How recently have they done?
They're actually
that?
2 years behind.
They're 2 years behind.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Okay, I'm not trying to be obtuse. I got lost here. So when I asked the question about what this taxable assessment meant, you said it was the vacant value of the land. And Kirk just told me that this is 75% of the estimated cost of building construction.
Yeah.
So,
again, I may be conservative,
but
The increase in the land may be minimal. or it may be more than minimal, depending on the commercial properties. But out of that 334 million and 303 million, there's not as much commercial industrial new construction as the past 5 years.
Understand. I'm hearing two different bases for assessment. One is on the land, and Kirk is saying this is a percentage of the building permit of the construction. Is the land included in that amount?
not in the building permit data.
No.
The building permit data is just strictly the construction
Okay, then
costs.
I heard you correctly. So,
Land that would be additional, I think what Wes is saying, that eventually the land will move from vacant to an improved state. The value of that, we don't know. Wes, you probably make accounts. for
but what
this,
are
right?
these numbers based on?
The new construction,
Okay, so
The
they're not
estimated
based
new-
on the vacant value of the
No.
land.
it's the estimated new construction
Okay,
that
so,
we feel that will be completed at the end of 2022 and all of 2023.
okay, so these numbers are not based upon the vacant value of the land.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So, all right, thanks. Yeah, to be quite honest, just based upon that, on the conversation we just had, I will have to go back and really take a good look at this. Because I just am not, I'm pretty sure I heard two different things and I'm not sure why I did. But maybe I misheard, so I'll take another look at it.
Okay.
Okay.
So we want to look at some of the residential properties that are selling and look at the average days on market. We have average of 14 days in July of 2021. In June of 2022, it was 10 days. The 5-year average is 30 days. Well, if you look at June of 2022 and July of 2021, it doesn't seem that interest rates and inflation seems to be affecting the days on market. So I think that will remain robust. What I'm seeing when I look at the new construction, I think that we may have more $350,000 to $500,000 homes than we will, and we'll have minimal $2 to $3 million homes, even $1 million homes. Why is that? One of the reasons is space. You know, if you're building $1 million, $2 million, $3 million homes, acreage has to come with it. I think that some of the areas that can be developed, it's just not enough space to be profitable for a builder compared to smaller homes and placing more homes in it. And as you know that, you know, since 2008, when the market went down, a lot of builders closed their businesses. And they didn't come back. So now there's not enough companies that build properties to try to keep the people in houses. There's a lot more people wanting a house than there is houses that have been built and for sale.
So we could just go back to that slide actually for a moment. I think it's really important, and I know that there have been news stories, it seems like every week, on the volatility in the housing market. And that's really what these averages are pinpointing for us, that obviously we're gonna have a much harder time of providing the analysis when people are putting in to purchase homes and they can't even get a mortgage on it because the amount of money that they are offering for the home is so far above the appraised value. So, you know, when you see the price that somebody is paying for a home is so much above the amount that was listed, that home was listed for, it makes it much harder for us to really know where are we trending, you know, and are we able to truly account for all of these properties as we provide the analysis. So it's very difficult right now, and I'm sure Wes will back that up. It's very difficult to truly provide where are we in terms of, you know, are we at the right values, whether that be assessed values or the appraised values.
Do we know what the average days on market is right now?
I believe it's still at about 16 to 20 days.
Gene, this data came from the Greater Harrisburg Association of Realtors. So they give us a monthly snapshot.
Yeah,
So that was one piece. There's another piece of over listing price, the offer over listing price. It's like, I believe it's 102 in July. So it's showing that practically everything is selling over listing price, and you're seeing it selling very quickly.
okay, thank you.
So when I'm looking at the market and the assessments, I have 3 indicators that I look at. The first one is the common level ratio. And what that is the assessed value to actual sales. It's as simple as that. It's what we have assessed compared to the actual market sales. And that information is sent to the State Tax Equalization Board, who in turn gives a common level ratio. And we have discussions with the State Tax Equalization Board every year about how they're trimming their sales and things like that. Then you have the coefficient of dispersion, and it's the average difference of a group of sales as compared to the assessed value. So what it is the percentage of a median value, number of sales, and it's the percentage each way up or down from that line, that median line. And it tells me how uniform we are.
So what constitutes the group? You mentioned a group of, is it comparables? Is it geography?
It's in our case, it's all sales. It's
all sales.
yes, it's valid sales. It's and what we're using it for. It's vacant land, commercial, industrial, residential, all of the types of land and types of buildings and types of properties is put into one. That's because Pennsylvania, the institution does not distinguish between the class of property. It's all one class. And so that's how the State Tax Equalization Board has to deliver their findings.
Let me just speak to that for a second. So I understand because of the uniformity clause, there's an aggregation. So, but it doesn't mean we don't have information on the relative differential between it's a bad term, but the relative difference between commercial and residential. Having those broken out would provide us, I think, some.
You have a reference page in there that shows you what's that.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is not necessarily just one page, but there's a number of indicators through here. I'll resist going through now. I think there's a number of indicators we would get more value out of what it means.
Okay.
If it's broken out that way.
Okay. Well, I did have the coefficient of this, the common level ratio there.
Okay.
That shows you. It's a concern for us.
Sorry. I don't want to hold it up. So
I
don't want to hold things up.
Okay.
I may refer to that.
And I can go over that. Yes, I have that to you. So on the coefficient of dispersion, it really measures uniformity. And there's a percentage between the median value as to assessed value as to how that is. And the ratio is between 5 and 30%. I think next slide will show you what percentage we are. And then it's 5 to 30%. If you're up into the 30%, 34%, it's a concern that you're not valuing all the properties uniformly. And that may not mean that the actual assessor isn't valuing it correctly. It's because a lot of other factors like appeals and markets and lighted areas, and when they're in the sales, it may show that the uniformity is off.
So how do you account for geographic differences between, say, the West Shore and the Western if our group is all sales, are we not missing some of the finer points between the various regions of the county?
Yes, we can look at that. All of our property has a neighborhood. So it was developed in 2010, last reassessment. Now, some of those neighborhoods have changed, but we can't change them because we can't do that without doing a reassessment. And so we add to, we make, new developments and things like that. We look at putting a new neighborhood, but we have to use 2010 values once we place the neighborhood in there, not today's values.
Okay.
And the price related differential, again, measures how far valid sales vary from the mean assessed values as expressed as a percentage, meaning that it indicates if you're valuing lower value properties too high and higher value properties too low. So 0.98 would mean that we would be valuing higher properties too low and lower properties probably too low too, if it's down to 98. And 103 means that, you're valuing the lower values too high and the higher values too low. So this is our common level ratio. In 2018, it was 98.1. And in 2024, it will drop to 79%. But our uniformity is in 2022 was 11.1, 23, 12.6. And in 24, I projected using the calculations at 15.3. And that's the coefficient of dispersion. The price related differential is at 102 and it's going up to 103, which is acceptable numbers. So we're actually able to value uniformly thus far. Even though the values are much higher, we're able to value those properties uniformly, and we're valuing them, the way we should be valuing them, not valuing them too high or too low, based on sales.
So Wes, just before we move from that slide,
Okay.
Would it be a correct statement that because of the volatility in the housing market, these numbers are these projections are subject to change? That as if we see the, average days on market, what is the actual sale price over the listing price? If that becomes something more reasonable, these numbers might tighten up or like move closer to what we see the current year projections.
It could, yes.
I think that's important to note.
Wes, I'm going to ask another question about this taxable assessment. And you said this is done on a very conservative basis. It's very conservative. If the taxable assessment number changes, and it's more in line with the current 85%, these change, correct? This slide would have to change.
It would.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing a comparison between the two. Running these numbers both ways. But it's not something that anyone wants me doing in my office alone. So.
I don't understand that question.
So you said that the taxable assessments, that the numbers on this chart are very conservative. They're based on the 75% of the estimated building cost of the permits.
Well, that's for 2022 and 2023.
Right.
From 18 or 17 through 21.
Prefer.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
actually the increase in assessments.
Okay. So am I accurate to believe, to think that that what is here estimated on the CLR, the COD, and the PRD is based upon the projections on here for 2022, 2023, 2024?
Except for the 2024 79% of the common level ratio, that you have a reference page that shows you the numbers in the 79%.
I don't know how to speak this language. I think that's part of what is going on here. If these numbers changed, if the 2022 and 2023 conservative estimates on this page changed, will they affect the numbers, the estimates in 2022 and 2023 on this page?
It could, especially on the price related differential and the coefficient of dispersion, which isn't alarming numbers to begin with. And they may change somewhat, but what changes these numbers are appeals for blighted areas. You know, thus far, we don't have appeals in blighted areas. And so we won't see a lot of change in those either. The most concerning out of this is the 79% on the common level ratio. That's using appeals.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. It's not using the numbers on the taxable assessments, it's using appeals.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's the number that is used for appeal.
So your projections on the common level ratio on this particular screen are based upon projections and appeals.
Now, all of these are actual. The common level ratio, only the 2024 only the 2024 coefficients of dispersion price related differentials are projected. I projected them with some cells that I had.
When was the 2024 common level ratio published?
It hasn't been published. We have that information in our system. It's automatically calculated from the cells that we use.
So we don't know though what the state will come back with.
Usually after I talk to them, they're a point better than what we have in our system.
Okay.
And so they've published 2023 CLR also?
Yeah, the 2023 is already out. That's what we'll be using in September
Okay.
with appeals, the 85.7.
It was released in July or early August, correct?
Yes, it's
Okay.
Of this year or next year.
correct. It's June 1st. Usually
Okay.
first week in June. So, and so that should be alarming that in 1 year, it's going from 85.7 to 79%.
You're saying that's coming from the state?
Not the 79%, the 85.7.
Okay.
So the 79% is raw data that is available in our Canvas system, correct?
Yeah,
And that it is not always an exact correlation with what the state provides. But if the state typically provides 1 point, it wouldn't be out of the question that we could come in with a CLR of 80.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And when that adjustment is usually upward when we look at that with the state tax equalization. So it could be 79, 80, but the sales aren't done. It could lower. This is what comes out of our system. If you want to take a look at this, I know it's on your paper, but it's on the if you look at that, this is the sales the number of ballot sales that we've used thus far this year. A total of 782, and so the step ratio is at 79%. That's our calculations in the system, step ratio, because we don't know how we're going to trim. And so if you look at that, the residential homes were at 83%. But when you go down to the vacant land, we're at 55% of the sales. Now, we've only used 9 sales as a number because there's so much over asking price usually that we don't consider valid.
So you only use 9 of the total vacant land sales for 2022 so far, even though there are more than 9.
Yes,
How many total are there?
I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
I could do that for you.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that would be good to know.
So it's 782 sales thus far. And so, you know, it's setting with the step, and see, we don't know how step will do the trimming. We don't know exactly what parcels that they will trim. They will, you know, trim by, you know, adding to or deleting from the sales report that we supply them.
Are there other things on that particular slide where? So we've got a total of 782, but we know there's more sales in vacant land. Is there anything else there where the actual total sale amount isn't included because we believe it was an outlier?
Oh, yes.
So how many?
I don't have that information. I can get it.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have seen a comparison, I think, of those things. I'm very accustomed to Dana setting this up in such a way where she says, this is what's really going on. This is what we are worried about. This is what we project. And you know, this takes me to my recommendation. I mean, so I'm not accustomed to not having that right in front of me.
Well,
For the
something
conversation.
that we actually, you know, we may discuss it with the State Tax Equalization Board, but these are what we consider as ballot sales.
Okay.
And so they may
Okay.
question some of our sales that we invalidated, and we give them reasons why they're
Okay.
invalidated, and then they either agree or not agree, but they seem to always agree that once we give them an explanation that, and they use these sales.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions on the projections? So we're looking at 115 average appeals per year thus far between 2017 2022, with an average loss per year of $28,074,000. That, you know, that's less than 1% of the total properties in the county. You know, the values have gone so high based on our 2010 assessed values that you have a difficult time trying to tell the board that your value is incorrect.
How many appeals do we have we had this year, or do we have scheduled? Because with September tomorrow, correct, is the deadline?
Yeah, many of them come in, but we're projecting probably 70 appeals this fall.
Okay, and that would give us a total for the year of?
70, I think total. I think we're looking at, we've already heard 17. And I think that we'll probably get another 53, probably tomorrow.
Okay, okay. So substantially fewer appeals this year than the average over the last
That's correct.
5,
That's
6
correct.
years.
Now I want to go into tax claim. We have, we also have, probably, I haven't looked at other counties, but, our delinquent parcels is 3.58 to 4.1, depending on the year. And so if we look at 2019, which is what we just sold last year, because we're 2 years behind with that too. There were 3,877 parcels, all but 44 properties actually were the delinquent parcels were paid. So only out of that 3,877, only 44 parcels were offered day of the sale, and 12 properties did sell. And what doesn't sell goes to judicial sale. So 3,833 properties. So people pay their taxes in this county. Another thing that, it's a robust county, growing county. So the impact, that estimate may be maybe more, the 334 million and the 303 million that we were talking about. But if that is, could be the number that we're looking at for 2022 and 2023 of increase in assessed value, that would be a 16 to 24% decline in assessed value on the average per year, 5-year average. So I think that, the 5-year average is $406,640,000. And if we're going all the way down to 334 and 303, we're looking at a good percentage of drop. And again, I don't believe that is, projected numbers is still high. We're projected with, it's not the amount of properties that's being built, it's what's being built. So I think we need to look at that and keep an eye on it and see, what commercial properties and industrial properties is coming in. So we may have a projected increase in appeals and assessment reduction. There's so many properties that we may start finding that there's properties that doesn't go, their value doesn't go as high as other values in other neighborhoods. And then they'll appeal. And even when you have a 79% common level ratio, they can appeal and their value is 15% higher than what we have it assessed for. And that they would win, even though it's 15% higher, because we have a 79% common level ratio. So we would be, $100,000 property. He comes in assessment for the 100,000. We would have to assess his property at 79,000 using a 79% common level ratio. Now, again, this year it's 85.7 this year, but next year that 79% could even get lower. So we get, so the appeals may lead to larger appeals with that common level ratio going so low. And then we could have a decrease or an increase in uniformity, because start getting a lot of appeals and a lot of market changes, and then the uniformity starts to suffer. And then also an increase in price rate differential you could get. And, there may be, if we get into blighted areas and people can't pay their mortgages, and we could have an increase in percent of delinquent taxes also. Do you have any questions?
Like I said, I have to go back and, based upon the presentation, take a look at this one more time.
Okay. I'll be glad to answer,
Yeah, I just,
any
I
questions.
don't have any at this moment. I'm sure that I will.
Okay,
have questions.
all right. Anything else?
I think from the line of questions here, that maybe there's some changes to the format and particularly the labeling of some of the slides that might make some of these things more clear.
Okay.
In the future, so.
Sure.
A little bit more connection between what it is and what it means, our decision process in this. Okay. Anybody have additional questions? So that's everything you have, anyways.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, there's nothing else, then we'll move on to item 5, business item 5, which is other business. So if we have additional issues to address, now's the time. I think, okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Move to adjourn.